In a poll of 1,500 adults taken in July 2010, 780 of those polled said that schools should ban sugary snacks and soft drinks. For part A, do a majority of adults, that is more than 50%, support a ban on sugary snacks and soft drinks? So here we're going to do a hypothesis test, and at a level of significance of 0.05. So for the null hypothesis, you would assume that this 50% is the exact correct proportion. So for h sub 0, I'm looking for p equaling 0.50. So A could be correct, and D could be correct, but B and C are already eliminated. They don't match up. For the alternative hypothesis, since we're talking about a majority, this more than 50%, that's what we'd like P to be equal to, greater than 50%. So D no longer works because this is not equal. So A has to be the correct choice. The null hypothesis is that P is equal to 0.50, but the alternative hypothesis is that it's greater than, representing a majority. And the next part asks to find the test statistic based off of the data gathered from this poll. I'm going to do this in StatCrunch. So if you go to Question Help and open up StatCrunch, we're going to open up a calculator that will do a hypothesis test for us. Okay, it's located here. You go to Stat. We're talking about proportions, so I'll go to Proportion Stat. Again, here we have one sample, and the information from the poll is summarized for us, so I'm going to go with Summary. So now we have this number of successes and number of observations. The number of observations is the 1,500. That's everyone that was surveyed, so 1,500. And the successes in this case are going to be the 780 of those people who said that they do actually support a ban. The other stuff that we have to enter is we have to select the hypothesis test, which is already selected, and the null hypothesis is already set to be p equaling 0.50, or just 0.5. But the alternative hypothesis should be greater than this value. And this is everything that we need. If we click Compute, we will get all of the necessary information to enter into this problem. Specifically, this thing, the z-stat. Okay, it says round it to 2 decimal places, and that is 1.55. That 4 gets rounded up to a 5, so 1.55. So this data here is information that is 1.55 standard errors above 0.50. Now what about the p-value? Let me bring back in this data from StatCrunch. Okay, this is the p-value, which we're going to round to 3 decimal places. So that's 0.061. 0.061. And I'll check my answer. All right, great. Based on your test statistic and the p-value, we have 2 options. We can either reject the null hypothesis. So that would mean, oh, the data that we got is strong evidence to suggest that a majority do, in fact, support a ban. Or we do not reject. We fail to reject this. The information that we gathered, it's just not strong enough to actually suggest that a majority supports this. You can use either of these, but I think I'm going to rely on the p-value to get my answer. Just scroll back up a little bit here. It told us to use a level of significance of 0.05. That's 5%. And here the p-value is 0.061. So it's about 6.1%. And unfortunately, this p-value is greater than the level of significance. What this means is the data that we got, it's not far enough away from the middle. It's not strong enough evidence to suggest that we can reject the null hypothesis. Just for sake of argument, if you had a z-score that was like 3, like you were 3 standard errors away, and your p-value was less than 5%, like 0.001, that would mean your data, it's very strong evidence that you could use to reject the null hypothesis. that just didn't happen for this problem. So unfortunately, we do not reject the null hypothesis. So the last part here says choose the best interpretation of the results you obtained in part A. So two options. The percentage of all adults who favor banning is significantly more than 50%, or the percentage of all adults who favor banning is not significantly more than 50%. And we determined that it's not, so we're going to go with this. And that is it for this problem.